All right, welcome everybody to the Return2Play Podcast, where all we care about is helping you return to play without limitations. I'm here in the Biooptimization Institute, located inside of St Pete Calisthenics, here with Dane, our Director of Fitness at St Pete Calisthenics. Today we're going to kind of run through our class schedule in its entirety and touch base and highlight a few key takeaways that we hope everyone gets from those classes, so you know what to expect and can help navigate which class is best for you to start out with as you come into our facility.
I think we're talking, it's just like an important thing to go through the classes and maybe the description of each and what our thoughts are on each class, because sometimes it's easy to look at the schedule and kind of be a bit flustered, like, oh, what is this class versus that class, or which one should I attend, and things like that. So I think just making a little bit more actionable takeaways for what each class actually is.
And in our return to play assessment, this is something that we would help you navigate based on your situation that we go through in that assessment. But we're going to do a little bit more of a general version here today. And if you end up coming through and doing an assessment, we'll help you kind of fine tune which category you may want to start out with. I think maybe let's start with just the calisthenics class in general.
Sure. Yeah, calisthenics. And like the gym is St. Pete Calisthenics, so it might be important to note like what we have calisthenics class, obviously, but then the other ones, they still fall within the cohesive philosophy of the gym or the facility, right? So that might be an important like takeaway. Some people is like calisthenics is like the only thing you guys do. It's like, well, that's not exactly true. And then it's like, then it's kind of a confusing point. I don't know if you've talked to people would that have had that, or it's like they're not sure. They kind of question like what, and then they're like, what is calisthenics?
The only thing they can think of is the freestyle on the bars where they see the people flipping around crazy, or like a planche and the front and back lever.
Right. Then they maybe think it's not for them or something like that.
Or it's so far away from me, where do I even think about starting towards that? I'm nowhere near ready for that.
Yeah.
We break it down to a very beginner-friendly level in the calisthenics class. It's really, at this point, an all-levels class. At some point, we may distinguish between levels, but we've realized almost everyone coming in is pretty much starting off at the foundation level. Even if you've been lifting weights for a number of years, typically what we're seeing in this first class or two is some people are a little bit humbled by the difference in the type of strength that it requires when you're starting to learn calisthenics. If all you've done is traditional weight training for several years, it's essentially a difference between open chain and closed chain exercises where your body is doing all the movement around whatever apparatus, whether it's the floor or a bar or parallettes or any of that, versus that thing moving to you.
Yep.
And it requires a lot more stability and a lot more control and a lot more attention to eccentric time and loading to ensure you have the finesse to do that skill without it being as risky as it looks.
Right. Yeah, so like in contrast, you would think maybe doing a dumbbell bench press. You do have some stability, but most people are just focused on getting that dumbbell up, as opposed to in calisthenics, your body is the thing that's moving. You're locked into the parallel bars or the floor or something like that, and now you're moving your entire body weight against the floor or against the apparatus. And I think most people, can be humbling because maybe they feel like they're doing less work than they would be with cranking out dumbbell presses, but then the next day they're like, oh my god, like I'm so sore. Like what happened yesterday?
And it's usually in areas that they're just like, I don't get sore there when I weightlift. So it seems like it's almost always the stability muscles that you're activating that first class or two that just haven't been stimulated to that degree in your style of training, at least as of your recent history.
I'd say like maybe the full body component of it and just isometric, like contractile potential. So if you're doing like some kind of planche push-up or even just a regular push-up, if it's being coached properly and you're like having core engagement and you have posterior pelvic tilt with your butt engaged and your legs are straight and you're having tension in all these muscles, aside from the fact that you're actually just doing push-up and like working the muscles that people would think of, as opposed to just laying on a bench and everything's turned off and you're just pressing the weight. So it's like that bodybuilding approach is like targeted towards my chest. I want to make my chest do the work and my chest to grow. But then when you're doing the calisthenics, you're like, oh, my shoulders are really sore, but also butt is sore for some reason because you've been squeezing it and engaging these different muscles that you're not used to.
And they're like, I thought we did like 80% upper body yesterday, but they're like, my abs, my ass, my glute, medes, like all these different motions that they're like, I must not utilize that rotation in my hips as much. You're stabilizing for single leg stuff or a lot of different things. You'll want to create rotation in calisthenics to create that stability in that fascia line so that you can do the cool lever someday and have those little more flashy moves become accessible to you. I think starting to understand, I think you mentioned it, the isometric nature of calisthenics.
That's a big piece for sure.
Is a huge part of why I decided for calisthenics to be the route that we go, because I had the corrective exercise niche as a personal trainer, and what I realized I was doing to help people get back to whatever sport it was or get back to weightlifting was essentially teaching them calisthenics and bodyweight forward movements to a level of quality that allowed them to squat better, deadlift better, bench press better, golf better, whatever it might have been. And being able to implement that in a class form now where it's just residually trickling out through our core curriculum, you could say, is really how I wanted to try to make sure we could help as many people as fast as possible. Because when I was doing one-on-ones with people, it's only so many people I can help in a certain amount of time. So I was like, no one is teaching calisthenics on a mass scale as the dedicated form for that facility. It was always just like, oh, there's a couple bars over in that area of the CrossFit gym, or there's a couple of bars over there in the gymnastics or the cheerleading gym. But
yeah, I think it's, and maybe differentiating the way that, at least our view of calisthenics in terms of building an isometric strength and eccentric loading, and then eventually into some concentric movement, which most people are used to just doing concentric movement, as opposed to, we were just talking before we started of like the guys swinging around in the park, and maybe that's what's thought of as calisthenics. 360 crazy spins around on the bar, and it's like, our view is a little bit different than that, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah. That stuff's awesome, and I love watching it, and I hope to start dabbling with it at some point here shortly, once I have time to really get back into my training, now that the gym is starting to be a little bit up and running.
Like, for me, I feel like it's a version of expression.
Yes.
Like, you can express movement in that capacity, but it's not necessarily what you should be doing all the time. You should be training and practicing new things in different positions. So then from the base, so like the root of the calisthenics classes, and in terms of like the levels of people that we have coming into the facility so far, like they're needing that isometric strength in positions just for awareness. Learn how that position feels, what muscles are firing when, and then maybe you build into a slow lowering into a position. And then eventually you can do it for reps, but that's like the building blocks is isometrics and eccentrics, and then finally concentrics, where you can like have that expression piece built in.
I think it's all about training the joints and the tendons and the connective tissue appropriately from the start, so that as you start getting to the concentrics, your tissues are tolerating of that extra load and that tug of war aspect that happens when you do stuff like freestyle, which is a lot of disconnecting from the bar and then reconnecting, which is a lot of explosive action required on the tendons. And if you don't have adequate muscle endurance or tendon strength, then something's going to tear eventually, or something's going to give in another type of way.
If you just think about it in like the most simple terms, is like, if you can only hang from the bar for 10 seconds, then how many swings and twists can you do? At best case scenario, 10 seconds worth, which is not nearly enough when you see those guys going for like 30 seconds to a minute, a bunch of complexes and crazy stuff. So like, that's the foundation, is you need to hang first, and then maybe you add some motion and active positions.
Maybe a single arm hang. You just let one hand go for a little bit, and then maybe you play on the monkey bars for a little bit, and then you kind of grow from there.
Yeah, the point is that isometric sets the tone for what you can achieve later on. And another piece to it is, no matter, I don't know if this is fully accurate, I think it is, just coming up with it on the spot. And basically in every concentric, or like everything that you're doing with a movement, something is working isometrically.
Definitely, especially in calisthenics, because your entire body is essentially got to become as stiff as possible for you to isolate whatever prime mover you're targeting.
Exactly.
So like if we're trying to do a skull crusher to get the triceps to be the prime mover, we're going to have you tighten up your core in basically a hollow body type fashion so that you've created a plank. Now when you add the elbow movement, your triceps are doing 90% of the work. You're just isometrically holding the entire rest of your body. Your glutes are tight, your core is engaged.
Also, your shoulders are staying fixed in one position, so that's isometric at whatever angle that is that you're doing your skull crusher.
I describe it as a full body isometric minus the prime mover that you're desiring.
And then I was even thinking more in terms of like even athletic movements. So like playing a sport or even running. Just like a lot of people just go in for runs. They think they need to get fit, and running is the thing that's going to do it. But obviously your legs are moving, but your torso should have some level of isometric contraction that's keeping everything stabilized. Otherwise, you're just flopping around like a fish, and that's a recipe for injury.
That's
or
bad
like
news.
like punching and martial arts and things like that. There's like isometric twisting, working together in rotation, but then pieces are stabilizing you through isometrics as you can do that twist. Otherwise, you have nothing to push off of or nothing to pull off of. Just a thought I had.
I think it's the beauty, and what I realized essentially I was doing after doing it for a few years is I was teaching lots of the isometrics, and it was just inherent in a lot of the calisthenics movements, and the early progressions is just body awareness. You're teaching lumbopelvic control, you're teaching shoulder depression to someone who doesn't know what their shoulder blades feel like. They haven't thought about their shoulder blades probably ever.
Just that stability component of the contraction. And like one big thing that you'll see in the classes, at least I've been noticing it too in classes, is the just scapular control, which is what you just mentioned, but being able to retract, protract, depress the shoulder, and elevate the shoulder on command, essentially, and against your body weight. A lot of times it's getting into the position, but then the shoulders immediately sag. So we know that there's such a big level of foundations that need to be laid before they can do anything else.
So I think a lot of the classes, we trickle in mobility, we trickle in stability, we trickle in core awareness, we trickle in breath work, we trickle in some conditioning towards the end, I would say. You'll still get a little bit of that heart rate elevation at the end, but it's a very targeted class based on a lot of the foundations required to get to all the cool stuff in calisthenics eventually. But essentially at the beginning, it's a lot of understanding how to brace, understanding how to maintain that hold in one area of the body while the portion you want to do most of the work actually can feel like it's doing most of the work.
And I guess the underlying thing is that we're looking at a longevity focused program, and eventually you being able to move your own body within space without fear of injury. So it's developing all those positions that's needed. It's just calisthenics as like the vessel for that type of training.
And the big takeaways for that calisthenics class is essentially we're getting isometric control, we're getting body awareness, and this is the strength training component of what we're offering here at St. Pete Calisthenics. The next classes we're going to start to dive into a couple of other key categories, but I would say the calisthenics class is your strength training class of our core offering.
Yeah. And on that note, we could even differentiate, which we're going to start doing it to some extent, at least internally, is like maybe one day we'll focus more on the bent arm strength positions. So anything where your elbow is bending, you think more of like pull-ups and push-ups and dips and things like that where the arm bends. So that's a bent arm strength, which a lot of people are familiar with the bent arm strength positions. But one thing they're not familiar with is straight arm strength. You see like a big deficiency in straight arm strength.
Big time.
So you're doing things where your arm doesn't bend, but you're operating, maybe doing something like a front lever.
Which, do
or
that
a back
again.
Lever.
You'll notice how all the movement is coming from back here. So like he's really locked in the arm. So that's
Shoulder
the control
girdle.
most people are missing when they first come to class, that awareness of what's happening in their torso and what's happening even deeper than that. We tend to think of our arms very predominantly because they're right in front of us and it's the thing we use 90% of our day. But tapping into what our torso is doing, even in your weightlifting and all these other sports, what happens when you're running, most of the dysfunction that comes out of that sport or activity comes from a lack of ability to stabilize the rest of the system while you're doing that sport. So running a marathon with an unstable pelvis, of course you're going to have psoas and ilio-psoas flare up the next morning because you just hammered them in positions that they're not comfortable with on an unstable pelvic floor.
And like if you think of every step that you take as a rep,
Thousands of reps
and you
you
run
just
for even 1 mile, which most people consider a really short run is 1 mile, but how many steps is in 1 mile? I don't know the answer.
Probably 2,000, I would bet, if
yeah.
it's 5,000 feet.
Yeah, so you've done 2,000 terrible reps on your body.
And walking if you watch a skeleton walk, every single joint in the body articulates every single step you take. So you're hitting dysfunction in every single joint as you're hammering in bad reps of running. So not that we necessarily have anything against running, but we do definitely think that a lot of people run with improper form in a fashion that is only going to inevitably cause an injury down the line. And as much as you can find a good coach who knows running technique, we definitely encourage, if you're a runner, get your running technique assessed by someone who knows what they're doing, because it can make the difference in how long you're going to run and how many surgeries you might need and how many return to marathon spurts you might have. We want you to do whatever activity you enjoy, but do it in a way where you feel confident that you're not going to run into the problems that you see happen to all of the athletes around you who maybe aren't taking those things into consideration. They're pushing through those injuries. They're running marathons on sprained ankles, and they're running marathons with knees that aren't fully recovered from the last one. Just because they can show that their body can handle it doesn't mean you should do it. And this gets into a little bit of the ego lifting category, which we talk about in the Return to Play education portion. Maybe we'll dive into that.
How do you feel about David Goggins running his
I love the motivation power that comes out of him, but
his knees.
I do feel for his knees, or his lack of knees.
Like sucking the fluid out of his knees so that he can go run 150 miles.
So
somehow he still places in like the top 5 in his division. Like, what?
Wild. He's such an anomaly, and it's amazing to see how much the body can endure, and it's a great point to prove that the body can handle a lot more than most of us are willing to put it through. I don't know that plays into the longevity overall, how he ends up doing in another 10 or 20 years. I'm curious if he's going to have fully bionic legs or not by then, or if it's just a matter of strengthening the tissues around it to a degree where having a meniscus doesn't matter. Because I'm pretty sure he's missing ligaments and meniscuses, right? Like his knees are like completely, they're like, you shouldn't even be able to walk.
I think so.
I forget the exact complications and the combination, but you shouldn't have to fight through pain to do the activity that you enjoy. There is a path out of it so that you can have fun doing that thing again. It doesn't feel like you're just trying to catch back up to what you used to be able to do. If you do happen to be a runner that's looking to get out of pain, come check us out for the Return to Play program. We would love to help. But I think let's segue into our next class. That kind of covered majority of the calisthenics stuff and some of the principles behind it, and how even our core curriculum should have a element of helping you fix some of those chronic aches and pains. Even if you don't go through our full Return to Play program, I picked the classes that we offer specifically because it was the things I was using to help people get back anyways.
It's built in a bit. It might take slightly longer.
Right, because it's not going to be individualized, the whole program, but we've already had a few people. Mark Metry, I'll plug his review right here. He maybe has been coming for 6 weeks or so, but he's already had a tremendous difference in how he feels, even so much that his chiropractor mentioned, like, hey, your adjustments have been holding. I haven't felt you as out of whack the last several weeks. Whatever you're doing at the gym is
stability and core strength, essentially.
Exactly, and that's what I wanted to circle back to, is that's the benefit of just a few weeks of isometric training. Now, I will tell you, he's been coming to 5 or 6 classes a week, sometimes 2 classes a day, where he'll do like an animal flow class and a calisthenics class. A number of other members who are doing that too, and it's one of the nice things about how we do our schedule is you can double up on classes knowing that one's targeting something very different than the one following it. So you could do animal flow beforehand, get your mobility component checked, and then stability comes in afterwards with the calisthenics class, and you're going to tire yourself out a little bit extra. Or you could flip it around and it would be fine still. It's just a matter of the intensity you put in to that first class that would maybe change.
Almost never, no matter what class it is, you're almost never like fully trashed where you can't do another class. Like you can almost always do another class so that there's room left in the tank. You may be fatigued out, like you just did a whole bunch of
neural fatigue,
a bunch of pull-ups, and you're fatigued out a bit, so you wouldn't want to do more of that.
Yeah.
But you could then jump into something else like an animal flow, like you said.
And that's the next class I think I want to talk about is the animal flow offering. It is definitely one of the big uniques that we have here at St Pete Calisthenics. It is definitely one of the big mobility components of what we have here. We do have a couple yoga classes, but The animal flow is much more mobility forward. Where I would say I've come to distinguish yoga and animal flow a little bit is yoga does allow a lot of flexibility work into the mix, whereas animal flow is predominantly mobility only. Your body weight is up the entire time and you're shifting through space for 1 to 4 minutes at a time. Whereas in yoga, you're going to relax into a position and let gravity help you stretch for a little bit, or you're going to lay down on the floor for a minute, or happy baby or something where it's a little bit more gravity assisted. Whereas animal flow, you're activating through full range of motion much more constantly throughout the hour, and there's less of a calm component to it. It is much more of a workout, I guess. So it would definitely more compared to like what you would feel at the end of like a power yoga class.
Basically, the difference would be in yoga you may have much more passive stretching
Yes.
into the positions, but then in animal flow you're actively moving, so then it's active positions that you're hitting.
You're now strong in those deep squat patterns. You're now strong in that crawling gait. You're now strong in the crab position, which is very good for anti-desk posture. If you have a desk job and you sleep in the fetal position, your hip flexors are just so short all of the time. So there's moves like the scorpion and the crab reach where you get full hip extension and you're encouraging a little thoracic rotation at the same time. So your spine is getting this really big dose of movement nutrients, and these are the things that just really build up to what Mark is kind of experiencing. He's been dabbling with animal flow, calisthenics, probably the most, and I know he's done a couple steel mace classes. But between those three, he's seems to notice a pretty good difference in just 5 or 6 weeks that he's been with us. So that alone is a really cool observation for me, and being able to see what I was hoping to have come out of the classes is actually happening even as early as it is, which is really cool to see. So animal flow is essentially a ground-based movement practice where you do have some animal components, but it is not necessarily just about acting like animals, but there is much more of a element of improving the human animal. So there's moves like the underswitch and the side kick through, and some that are more just descriptive rather than based off an animal name, like the bear crawl, or in our instance, the forward traveling bear. The standard bear crawl, we actually call that forward traveling beast. So there's a couple of differences from some traditional fitness terminology and the animal flow terminology, but I would say it's probably a good 50-50 split of animal movements names and then human animal component. So very big on stability. The mobility component I already mentioned. Once you get to like a 4-minute flow, you definitely have your muscle endurance checked, stamina check, your cardio check. All of these things are happening at one time, as well as full body activation and proprioception and neuroplasticity benefits, because now you're listening to someone call out something, you're responding in real time with a group of people with a motor action tied to it. Mm-hmm. So it's like a fun adult game of Simon Says that's maybe even a little more complicated, but the neurological benefits are as vast as the physiological benefits and the physical benefits. I think animal flow really helps highlight and improve.
Be pretty good at Twister, huh? Remember that game?
I have actually played in the last 12 months, and I will say it definitely
crushed it.
No problem. So if that was ever a game that you wanted to get better at, Animal Flow will definitely help you with that.
Yeah, I'd say some people, I think they just get tied up on the whole animal name and maybe the terminology of like the animal names, like you mentioned, beast and crab and all that. They're like, whoa, like, what is this? But like for me, the one thing I like about it is the crossbody patterns, which is something that you mentioned in most of the classes I hear you say is like crossbody.
And oblique sling.
Like, you're working your slings and you're rotating in different positions, which we generally don't see much rotation in standard methods of training. Even like CrossFitters, they say that they do a little bit of everything. Probably the one thing they don't do is rotate very much, just by nature of the movement or the movement selection or exercise selection. They're doing a lot of up and down forwards movements like running and things, but they're not necessarily twisting under load or under intensity.
Or even doing anti-rotation, which is sometimes even more necessary.
Like, I mean, if you're training well, then you should be incorporating it for sure, but like if you pick any typical CrossFit workout out of a hat, I would say, I don't know if there's any that has a rotation movement in it. Could be wrong, but there's not many. But then the other one thing you mentioned as well is just rhythm, like rhythm and timing. And one of the courses I've taken through the Active Life is longevity, and then the neurological considerations course. So like people with strokes or like traumatic brain injuries, things like that. And then longevity is the older population. It's like 70s, 80s, 90s. One thing that they, like on the down low, they're losing and they're not realizing it is their rhythm, timing of just taking, even as simple as taking steps. Or part of the course for some people, they recommend doing exercises to a metronome. Like, so play a metronome over the speaker. That way, like, they can coordinate their, like, boom, boom. It doesn't have to be clapping, but like they're doing the timing and teaching them their body to reintegrate that movement. So Animal Flow kind of naturally does that without needing to play a metronome, but it's like you're getting that stimulus in your body, and the more that you do it, then the higher capacity you have for it. As you age, you're going to drop off a lot less.
And it's just like building muscle mass. I think there's a lot of different health components that you could consider putting some investment into, but I think storing as much muscle mass as you can before you hit 45, and then storing as much neurological efficiency as possible before you start to go into your aging years is definitely only at your best interest, because it is very hard to regain the older that you get, both muscle and cognitive function. It's not impossible to get better at, but like the rate of improvement is going to be way slower if you're starting at 60, 65, starting to do this, or if you're doing it throughout your 30s and your 40s into 50s. You're going to have built up a much higher capacity before it starts to wane in those older years.
It's inevitably it's going to drop off a bit as you age. That's literally what aging is.
Peptides and some of that may come to help us out a little bit. We're kind of in the early stages of seeing how that stuff starts to really affect us long term and as we age. Low libido, whatever it might be, and you're like, I'm only 28 or 35. Why am I already feeling like this? There could be some hormone out of whack. There could be some markers you could improve. It is best to get you a baseline before 35 so that when you're 45 and 50 and you need that hormone replacement now, you know what your body feels good at, and you know where to get the doctor to aim when they start giving you that exogenous testosterone, or if you end up doing peptides that just upregulate something better than just giving you testosterone. Who knows what'll be better down the road, but starting to get a grip on that before you pass that 45 years old mark is definitely going to be more beneficial than not.
Yep, and rather than just guessing.
And it's that whole investing in your health, which we do have that workshop.
Like optimization is the key word.
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly.
It's like it's not just the standard or the average number
or normal, abnormal,
or like, because a lot of that just comes down to like, oh, like you're not
that
sick.
Far out.
Yeah, you're not that like sick, so it's fine. It's like, yeah, but you're maybe mediocre on the borderline, and like, what can we do to optimize it? So we're looking at optimization strategies rather than just maintaining an average, like, okay levels.
Exactly. And we're trying to help you come up with lifestyle things you can do to help optimize it before it comes to so abnormal that you need medication to get back to normal.
Lifestyle is the biggest piece. It's like almost always the lowest hanging fruit for everybody. No matter what your goal is, you want to be better at Animal Flow or calisthenics, and like, oh, how's your lifestyle? How's your because that's where your recovery comes in. So if that's terrible, like your nutrition, your sleep, your stress, you're not gonna get all the benefits that you could from taking the classes. So as much as we do want you to take our classes, you need to do the other things as well. And we're here to help educate you on that also.
Yep, and that kind of lets us to a good plug for the event that we have coming up this weekend. On December 6th, we're doing a Health is Wealth workshop with Dr. Aisa, a physical therapist that focuses a little more on a full body approach rather than just localized targeting of, I'm going to help you with your knee and then you're on your way. She's actually going to help address the full body, similar to what we intend the Return to Play program to do. But she will be a good resource for us here in the Return to Play program if we have any pelvic floor specialty needs. She is also very good at pelvic floor cases. So keep an eye out for that. We'll plug a link to that event down below as well. And we'll be doing more of those. So if you happen to be seeing this after this first event has passed, don't worry, we will likely repeat this one more than once. So a couple final bits on the Animal Flow aspect. There are a number of levels. You'll see level 1 through level 3 if you look at Animal Flow online. Right now we're teaching pretty much only Animal Flow 101, which is our entry level class. So you're very brand new, you've never done any Animal Flow before at all, that's the class for you. You just go over the first 10 or 12 movements pretty much until you have those down. whether it's 2 classes or 5 classes, before you move to the level 1 class. The level 1 class is going to go over the remaining 20 or so movements that exist in level 1 and start to help you learn how to sequence them into a flow a little bit more. Whereas the 101 class is going to just be getting familiar with some recall and awareness of the body as you navigate those first foundational movements so that you're not too overwhelmed when you move into the level 1 class. We're trying to make sure that there's steps in the process so that you feel taken care of at each point of your journey. The level 2 class will be coming out soon. Hopefully January, we're planning to get that out officially. Quentin has recently gotten his level 2 certification, so we can officially add that to our list coming here soon. Keep an eye out for that. And you'll notice that our level 1 class starts to even more so be limited to the level 1 only movements, because we will now have a level 2 class that starts to tie in a couple of those other transitions, extra components. So
And the level 2 is just more advanced moves added in?
A little more advanced. There's a little more emphasis on the tuck balance and a little bit more emphasis on breath work. So you'll add a little bit more of, think of like a martial arts breath where you're kind of controlling quick exhales as you hit those final components. So you're really creating that diaphragmatic demand, and now you're getting stability before you go into these more advanced elements that are more hand balancing forward and levitating and essentially more calisthenics heavy. There's movements like float 2 and leap 2 where you're holding a tuck planche. It's just a matter of, are you traveling left or right or forwards and backwards? And then how can you move through a tuck planche into a sweeping motion for a scorpion sweep? So there's a lot of cool crossovers between calisthenics and animal flow as you start to become more advanced. That's really where they start to bridge, and I think that's why it seemed like I got into animal flow so naturally, is because I kind of dabbled with calisthenics on the side. Even though I was predominantly like weightlifting, I was still doing 25% of my training was probably calisthenics, I would say. So I had a pretty good awareness of those things before I got into it, but it doesn't mean you need that much before you start getting into animal flow. It does start very foundational. What do you think we should? I guess finalizing with level 3. That gets to be a little more parkour, think high jumps, more leaps, more energy rolls that are like 4 or 5 combo movements. So it can really be something you almost have to choreograph and practice a few times for it to be done smoothly, because someone calling it out like you would in the 101 class or even level 1, I wouldn't be able to get all of those words out fast enough for you to do the sequence smooth enough. So we have to kind of probably put that up on the board. Everyone digest what we're about to do. We're only going to call out the most important segment of each movement, whereas in level 1, we're calling out the entire thing, the side, the leg, the movement into this, that, whereas at the level 3, you're much more just moving in sync based on your peripherals and your understanding of what you saw laid out on the board. So that starts to demonstrate your understanding of the language that is animal flow. And I do encourage everyone to think of it as a language as you're learning it. There are certain rules that you'll start to catch on to. I can do this move out of that move. I can do this position out of that base position. I can hit this transition out of that base position, but not that position. This allows that, but not that. There are a couple of little nuances. There's not a ton of them, I wouldn't say, but there's a few where you'll start to be like, okay, it's kind of like understanding nouns and adjectives and like when to use certain pronouns in this and that type of thing. So I think that is probably the best 1, 2, 3 level differentiation. It does get to be very dancey and elegant looking depending on how you tend to do your free flows, but at that level 3 component, it does look very well rehearsed usually and very like impressive. I kind of describe it as an ultimate display of body control, because you're going in and out of different cadences. You might be going a little fast for this piece, and then you slow down for this transition, then you speed up again, and then you jump forwards, but then you pull back, and then
It's like a bit of accuracy and precision in your movements, yeah.
both. And I like to think of it as like a shape-shifting type of practice. And in my head, I'm trying to almost confuse the person watching me or make them think like, whoa, how did he do that out of that? Or that's not where I thought he was going. I redirect in a way where they're just like, oh, I didn't see that one coming. Gotcha. Exactly. So that's just me playing with the audience a little bit. Those things only really come once you've gotten to understand the language enough where I'm effectively playing with it now. And that's a big element of St. Pete Calisthenics in general, is just encouraging play, because there's a quote I remembered hearing a few years ago that I got reminded of again a couple months back, right as we were starting to ramp up the Return to Play program, and why we settled on the words Return to Play is to highlight the play component even more, because the opposite of depression is play, and there's a big inverse relationship with that. And a lot of people who do not have something that they think of as fun enough that they would call it playing tend to be some of those people who are dealing with depression. You're already on medications, they can't find anything joyful, so they run into those cyclical negative thoughts. Whereas if you have an outlet, whether it's bowling or golf or acro yoga or aerial silks or calisthenics, whatever it might be, most adults don't have anything that's not going to the bar and drinking, or going to the football game, or playing softball, or going out on the boat. And most of those require a lot of alcohol use. So not only is it not benefiting your play, but it's actually tied to something pretty negative,
harming it
to your body. So I'm not here to say, you shouldn't drink any alcohol. I still enjoy my little amounts here and there on a weekly basis, maybe a couple of drinks 1 or 2 days a week. But I understand that alcohol is a toxin, and I'm not trying to introduce toxins on a daily basis. The recovery aspect that we also want to highlight is severely affected when you have alcohol. So understanding what happens when you decide to be like, all right, it's someone's birthday, maybe it's worth me having a few drinks tonight, but I'm going to understand I'm probably not going to sleep that good tonight. I should allow more time to sleep in tomorrow because my recovery is going to be affected.
There's ways to do it where it's better than others too, because if you're having those crazy sugary mixed liquor drinks, you can get drunk really fast, and then you have all the sugars added into it. But if you're just having a glass or two of wine with your friend at dinner, those are two very different things. Yeah. And some of the Blue Zone, have you seen the Blue Zone studies and some of that?
About how a lot of them drink wine and stuff regularly.
In the cultures, they regular, but they're drinking basically organic grapes that they have in their own garden, and they made it themselves all day long and whatever, and it's fermented, and then basically they're doing physical activity all day long, and then they might have a glass or two of wine in the evening as a social bonding piece, and then they attribute it's not the alcohol itself, it's the social and the relationship component that's helping them live longer lives. And then the fact that physical activity is built into their day. So they live in these little villages where they have to walk and garden and walk to the shop and do cook their own bread, make their own bread and stuff. So they're not just going to Publix and picking up 6 bottles of wine and slamming them back.
And most of that activity is in a category of heart rate that would be fat burning. So most of them have spent that day in that low energy intensity, but just enough to where your body's happy to use body fat because it's not super high exertion. So their liver has processed a lot of fats throughout that period of the day. They're ready to spend a little bit of time eating, and maybe the alcohol coming in isn't necessarily inhibiting their body from burning any body fat at that time because they've already spent all day doing that. Now they can enjoy the alcohol without the repercussions that maybe come with it. If you're already eating in a caloric surplus, you're not sleeping well enough, so you're not recovering, which means your calories aren't going to where they should, and now you're just in this gaining weight cycle.
Just down, yeah. And I think a lot of the alcohol component, we kind of went down the rabbit hole a bit with it, but it's a lot of everything with brain health and aging and things these days is about the mitochondria. I've been hearing about some of this, which Trip and the optimization guys, they know a lot about it. But yeah, it's harming the mitochondria. So basically all these terrible lifestyle choices that you hear people talk about, don't drink sugar and eat fried food, everything is coming back to harming the mitochondria and even mental health components. But then I was hearing this one thing where potentially it's called mitohormesis. Mitohormesis, do you know?
I was going to mention the word hormesis, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Or basically low levels of, if you have a lot of alcohol, it harms your mitochondria, but then low levels of alcohol, basically with exercise, you need that stress component to break down your muscles, so then you can build up more muscles. It's basically the same idea, but for your mitochondria. So it was saying that maybe that little bit of wine that those people are having, it breaks down their mitochondria just enough for the mitochondria to be like, oh, we need to be a little bit better. So then they actually now have better mitochondria long term.
The cell wall is stronger, whatever else.
It's all about, I'm a dummy when it comes to it. I don't know. I'm just repeating what I heard in my words, but that's the idea, is that you're stressing it just enough so that it adapts and gets it actually a little bit better. But if you do that all the time, then you're just constantly breaking down your mitochondria, and then you have negative.
It goes into the whole understanding the benefits of creating your own adversity, which is why you should train on a pretty frequent basis. Your body needs that to grow. Your brain needs that. That's why you should never stop learning, right? Once you stop using it, it goes away, and you need to stress the body out in ways to make it grow in a positive fashion. So learning a couple new things a week, good for the brain. Learning a couple new movements a week, good for the brain and the body. Unlocking a cool handstand push-up on a pronated bar, very tough, but a peak demonstration of you've mastered so many different elements that has led to that cool feat that you can do now.
Yeah, and you see even people that are good at handstands, then you put them on that in a pronation on the bar like that, and all of a sudden they can't do a handstand anymore. It's like, oh crap, maybe I should stop practicing all the handstands that I'm already good at and get better at this one. And then when you practice that one and you get better, then your other handstands get better also.
Even better.
So then it's just a stacking effect. Yeah.
Tiny bit of stresses just slowly building, and your diet is that type of way too. Certain foods that people think are healthy sometimes create inflammatory effects bigger than desired in some people. So instead of the hormetic effect, you get more of a IBS situation where now you're getting IBS, but it's really coming from the kale you keep eating because you don't process kale properly, but you keep hearing kale is healthy, so you keep eating kale even though it's giving you stomach aches. Yeah. Understanding that you should eat and do activities that make your body feel better, and trying to associate how do I feel today with what I ate yesterday, and how I feel today based on what did I do yesterday is really the only way that you learn, and treating yourself as a little bit of a science project in that fashion is the best way to grow and continually improve as you try to chase this 100-year lifespan with this longevity approach that most people are after right now. So that rabbit hole, wrap it up right there. I think, what was the next class we wanted to chat about?
Probably balance, I guess. It might fit pretty well, yeah.
Agreed.
So balance, it's another one that sometimes I think the perception is that, like, well, I'm just going to stand on one foot for an hour straight, or I don't know what people think necessarily, but I think it's actually a pretty cool class.
I think so too, and we've gotten probably some of the best responses from that class, I think, as far as, one, just the amount of fun people are having in that class. It's definitely, I think, the most fun class we offer as far as how many people I see smiling, how many laughs I hear coming out of that area of the gym, how many
they think they get
giggling
like
moments there are.
It looks like a bunch of kids out
exactly.
there.
And most people are like, is that a class? Are they just playing around? I'm like, nope, that's group fitness right there. And they're just over there hopping from one leg on the beam to the next and picking up a hacky sack and tossing them back and forth and slapping them around like they're playing.
Let's say that's like
keep away.
Usually that happens towards the end of class, right? Like that fun aspect, and then
it builds to be more fun towards the end. At the beginning, it's very foundational and all that, which you need for it to become fun towards the end.
Like, well, most people's feet are trashed.
Yes, that's really the ultimate underlying goal of the class, is to fix that.
Like, so in terms of trashed feet, what are we talking about? Like bunions, arches collapsed,
neuropathy.
Different things like that. I feel like
crossed over toes,
hammer toes, and
metatarsals that are just crammed so tight together that they can't actually flatten out. So we have beams that we get you to stand on, the soulmates, and some other beams that we pull out where you can feel your foot has to wrap around that apparatus to a degree that it's creating movement in those metatarsals.
Even
where there hasn't been.
Maybe clarify what you mean by beam, because people might think of like the balance beams that gymnasts run, and that's definitely not as scary as that.
No.
Which, have you ever stood by one of those, by the way?
It's been a long time.
They're way taller than you
It's been a long time. Your parallel bars are taller than
those are tall. Those are
think.
Big. Yeah, those are big. And that's on the lowest setting.
Is it really?
They can go much higher,
But no, it's a beam about this high off the ground. It's
basically on the floor, right?
Almost on the floor. It's just a slightly curved surface, so you can set it up next to a wall, so you can use it for a little assistance as needed at the beginning. But we build up to balance beams that are this high off the ground, and then someday we hope to have a balance advanced class where maybe we're doing slack lines, teaching you how to start with progressing towards that.
Or maybe a true beam.
Something like that. We're still kind of seeing how it progresses, but it has definitely gotten a lot of good feedback. A lot of people that have been dealing with hip issues, lower back issues, knee issues, ankle issues have all noticed that just doing a couple of sessions with the balance work, their yoga feels better. They're not feeling that stiffness anymore because they've gotten a lot of this lateral shifting movement that happens when your foot has to invert and evert on the beam. The chain reaction it makes all the way up the body tends to oscillate a lot of joints that haven't moved for these people in a long time. So I think it really clears up a lot of that protective tension that most of us walk around with on a daily basis that keeps you moving in a dysfunctional way because your joints are all kind of clenched up in their own type of way. So once you put all that movement in all those different areas, I mentioned how when you walk, every joint in your body oscillates just a tiny bit, or articulates, I guess is an even better word. So when you're doing stuff like animal flow or calisthenics or any of these really high proprioceptive pieces, it really helps, tie all that in.
Yeah, you mentioned the foot too, being able to kind of wrap around the object. And Eva, my son is 1 year old, but you can see his foot. He hasn't lived long enough to trash his feet yet. But you can see his feet, they just naturally curves, and he could just reach up and hit and he just puts it on the high chair, out of nowhere, and just has it on the plate, and I'm like, how is your foot wrapping? But basically the point is it's a natural.
His skeleton hasn't been affected by walking just yet, because he's right at that, almost walking right now, right?
Yeah, not quite. He's way faster at crawling.
I've seen him. He animal flows like a mad, creepy fast.
He has the best squat, I think, on the planet. He just hangs out in that squat for
long time.
Yeah.
Easily 10-minute test, he passes it.
Yeah, however long he wants to, he'll just sit down there.
Well, it just shows what happens when the body has the amount of movement that it should before it's really affected by our walking patterns. And I do get a lot of looks with how much movement I'm able to get in my foot, and it allows so much.
Potentially shoes or different specific footwear. I think dress shoes and high heels is the one that people point to quite often, or
those are the big culprits.
Crazy running shoes, where it's just so cushiony that your arch is just dumping.
Just dumping every time.
So then, you get.
Now you're getting stresses on the knees.
I guess in terms of the class, it's not all about the fun stuff does happen, but then we're working on more of those muscles of the feet, and you mentioned the ground up.
We'll go all the way up into toe dexterity drills, where we're working on splaying
toes and arches and loaded and eversion, rotating, but then building up towards maybe some tibs and some calf work and things like that. And people have knee pain just because their parts of their calf are weak and can't absorb forces. So then now they have back pain because the force has to go somewhere. So if you're not absorbing the forces through your primary contact point, it's going to exhibit either. We usually see knees, hips, low back.
It just trickles up the chain otherwise, and this kind of lets us highlight the ground up element to what we're doing. And the balance class is really the fully from the floor portion of that, in which we're teaching you how to control your primary contact point with the earth. We spend most of the day on our feet or sitting. Sitting is usually not going to help you do much of anything. But when you're standing, your arches should be actively controlling what's happening. Most of the shoes that I see people wearing tends to have so much support in it that your arch really isn't doing anything anymore. So you're just bound to have foot issues anytime you walk on flat ground, anytime you try to do anything with a minimalist shoe or flip-flops, that kind of stuff. It's really important to have this arch control and big toe mobility so that you can walk in a way that is not causing dysfunction down the chain. Because if your big toe doesn't move, now you're walking with your feet turned out. Now you're stressing your knees out. Now your hip is being weird. Now you have, duck feet when you stand. It just all trickles up from the ground. So us having this balance class is really helping address the first piece of that chain. Animal flow is really the full body ground-based practice where I'm teaching a lot of different proprioceptive demands to the person. And
other thing we didn't mention much is just being able to support your own weight with your wrists and with your hands. Yeah. I know there's been a few people in class recently, they're like, it's just my hands, just touching the bar or whatever, or supporting themselves. And it's we need to adapt to being able to support your own body. Because hate to break it to you, but you're with your body 24/7, so you need to be able to move it if something happens. So that's like one of those underrated pieces I think we just missed on.
100%. So we do train the foot, we train the ankle, and we train single leg work in the balance class. So we'll do single leg bridging, we'll do single leg Romanian deadlifts, we'll do star pose, mountain pose, tree pose. We'll work on some of those yoga elements. We'll encourage playing with the hacky sack in a whole bunch of different ways you probably never thought of.
Yeah.
So the games are kind of endless. I would
Grabbing
say we probably spend the first half addressing foot mobilization, activation, learning how to balance a little bit better throughout that first half, and then we try to spend the last half focusing on different games to now make that balance second nature instead of being so forward thought. Because that first half, I have you thinking about your foot a lot. Now the second half, I'm going to try and not make you think about your foot, but get your foot to do everything we just taught it while you're playing a game or focused on this other thing.
It's the application.
Exactly. So now if you step off a curb, your ankle knows what to do. You don't have to be like, oh, I stepped off a curb. Oh, I need to think about saving it. And then
too late.
Already too late. You're face into the floor by that point. You broke your hip. Not anywhere you want to be. So this is also an all ages class. We do have some classes that we're designating for seniors specifically. Not that you shouldn't come to the other classes. It can all be tailored to whoever comes, but we do offer some classes where we make it senior forward. So it really should be something that anyone is comfortable coming to. We do make it fun as possible. Your foot might be a little tired by the end of it, but they're probably going to feel great for a few days afterwards. I promise.
I'd say a cool thing about it too is once you take a few and you learn a bit, it's really easy to just implement that in your daily life.
Yeah.
So you could just be standing around at work or at home or cooking, and like you can do some mini drills as you're just in life. And then we have those toe spacers. Yep. So at home, when I get home, I just try to put them on immediately. Like I know I'm home for the night, put them on immediately, and you automatically get a few hours of toe spacing work, and then you can do some exercises while you're sitting on the couch. Sometimes I'll just
I need to be better about
do
mine.
some lifts and things like that, and just okay, roll through.
Nice.
Like
yeah,
it's just so easy to implement once you kind of know it and are aware of it.
Yeah, you're gonna get me back on my foot practice.
Because frequency is key. If you only attend one balance class and then never come back again, you may get a little bit better from that session, but you need the frequency.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is for you to be able to start implementing pieces throughout your daily life.
Especially for it to be something that's kind of subconscious, not where like you have to think about it. Like a lot of people after one class, they go take a yoga class and they're like, oh my God, my tree pose was so much better. My mountain pose was so much better. And it was just after one class. But you're thinking about it in the yoga class versus it just doing it when you walk upstairs.
Yeah, you need it natural.
Which is one of the big benefits that I know my client Kathy Wood has realized is she can go up and down stairs now. She doesn't need to grab onto the railing. She has enough confidence with her balance that she's able to, pass her half her age employees up the stairs, she says, sometimes. And she feels great about that, which I love that's a big takeaway that, she's realized is she feels much more confident and independent, even so much so that when she's doing, she travels a lot, obviously. She's putting her luggage into the overhead compartment. She will typically tell people, no, I trained for this, and stick her own bag up in the overhead compartment. And I've sort of encouraged that because one of the things that, although it's very nice that the expectation is to help our elders with stuff like that, it's really...
Don't call her an elder. How dare you?
It's really disempowering when you do that and you offer to do it for someone because now they're not going to be doing it themselves. And now that means eventually they can't do it themselves and they're going to have to rely on people. So as nice and courteous as that tends to be, I didn't mean to call her an elder, but she tells me, she's like, people keep offering to put my bag up for me. Do I look that frail? And I'm like, no, it's just the expectation that anyone you see who maybe has some gray hair needs help putting stuff up or help getting off of this thing because everyone with gray hair has bad knees, has bad shoulders, can't balance to save their own life if they tripped off anything. So it's just that expectation that has been set. So she's really, helping me push forward in empowering people, even in your 60s and 70s, to try to stay in charge of your world or it will slip away from you, especially as people are living to 100, 110 more consistently. It becomes more imperative that we're doing this stuff proactively.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because and maybe I just look like a asshole, but when I see people on the planes, like I usually like delay my offer to help them just out of that principle. I'm like, I'm gonna see if they can do it themselves, or like I'll give them the benefit of the doubt kind of thing. Sometimes they get it, like sometimes they struggle a bit, but like I'm watching, like, and if it was gonna fall, like I'm ready to catch it, like I'm confident in my abilities to catch it, but like I try to let them do it weirdly enough.
And that's, I would call that being kind
Yeah.
versus being nice. You know, it's nice to put it up there for them, but you're being kind in letting them attempt it and try to have the autonomy to continue to be able to do that. If you notice, they actually can't do it, being able to step in time to be able to, make them obviously not hurt themselves is
And if it's
the goal.
there's a judgment component there where if they need it, and like
For
I'm
sure.
just gonna step in and do it. Yeah.
But
and then speaking of airports, like another one of the like low key, my favorite flex to do on people in the airport is to just, because everyone goes up the escalators and there's like a mound full of people, you can't even find a spot on the escalator, just to go on the stairs right next to everyone and beat them all to the top.
by like twice as fast, probably
just walk,
too.
yeah, just walking, not like sprinting up or anything, just like walking at a regular pace with a backpack and maybe something in your hand to just get to the top before everybody else.
Your
So
baby
just, like,
in hand and everything, just cruising past everyone.
and you're the only one on the stairs.
Yeah,
Everyone else,
typically.
there's like 50 people piled on the escalator. You just walk right past them all.
And they were all just sitting for hours. So like, why are you trying to save all this energy?
Exactly.
If anything, you should be trying to move in between flights
more,
or before the flight or after the flight.
That is
regardless.
one thing I do. I try not to sit. I'll just like go for laps in the terminal. I'll walk from end to end to end to end if I have a layover. Yeah.
I'm that weird guy on the plane. I'll sit there and like, if I happen to stand up and there's like someone in the bathroom and I'm just next in line or whatever at that last call type of thing, I'll like squat down all the way and just like hold it for a minute, and then I'll stand up and just forward fold and just hold it for a moment, and I'll do these couple positions where people are like, oh man, that must feel really good right now. I'm jealous that he can do that. I just tend to look, when I get up from that forward fold, I tend to look around and I just see a lot of people are just like,
wow.
like, wow, that's nice that you can do that.
It's funny because like here, like just out on the calisthenics floor or wherever you are, that's just like a normal thing to do. It's almost weird if you're not doing that here. But then when we go out into the public situation like that, it's like, oh my God, what a weirdo, like sitting in the corner in the bottom of a squat on his phone. Like, it's like just a weird contrast.
Or like one leg way up here sitting on the box and you're kind of like texting, but you're standing. So like one leg is fully standing and one leg is up, and you're just like, well, how is he so far split? Well, he clearly has some good adductor mobility there.
I've done that many times, just like chilling in the most casual position, and everyone's like, how are you doing that? And I'm like, it's just a resting position. I don't even feel a stretch.
Another reason that we're on the floor during our podcast here, you probably notice how much we're fidgeting. I'm going to try to mention it every couple of podcasts just for people who maybe haven't seen the other ones, but there's a lot of benefits to sitting on the ground, and that whole ground up approach comes with just being comfortable on the ground. A lot of times I get clients even in their 40s who already can't get on and off the ground easy enough. They're already struggling to, like, if they had to get off the floor, they would have to crawl to a chair or a box or something to help get off the floor. So encouraging people to spend some time on the floor and embrace what it does make you do, which each time we shift, you notice we're in probably a slightly different position for our hips. So it's opening up a lot of things. It's requiring a lot of stability from our lower back to be able to hold ourselves up like this. And you're training those components that really add to that longevity piece that we're all kind of chasing these days.
I feel like I maybe mentioned this on another one as well, but the quote is your best posture is your next position. Or like your best posture is your next posture that you achieve. Like, doesn't matter if you're standing or sitting. Like, everyone demonizes sitting and rounded forward, but it's okay to be rounded forward as long because their next best posture is here. But if you're only stuck in this position, then your next best posture is actually to round your back a little bit and to shift to the side. So you mentioned fidgeting, and that always makes me think of that quote. It's not one optimal posture. It's more about moving versus just staying static.
And there's another thing. I'm gonna go ahead and do my make it popular moment now, but encouraging adults to spend some time on their stomachs a little bit. I don't know your thoughts.
That's what you do for babies, by the way. It's called tummy time.
Yep, I'm popularizing adult tummy time finally. I've been making my clients do it for years, and because we spend so much time in the seated position, when we sleep, most of us are sleeping in the fetal position or on our back.
Inflection, basically, so that puts you into extension.
Exactly. So spending some time, even if it's like start with 5 or 10 minutes at a time on your laptop and just check your email on your stomach like this. Not like this, right? We're training good posture and we're getting hip extension, all of the above, right? So do a little laptop work, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes tomorrow, and then an hour at some point is really helpful in addition to sleeping on your stomach for some of the night. Doesn't need to be all of the night, but like don't avoid sleeping on your stomach. One of the best positions you could do is actually sleep with one hip straight and one hip bent.
Do you put a pillow on that leg or?
If they need to.
Sometimes I put a pillow there just because it feels better.
It's something you get more stretch that way, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's gonna help your splits.
Yeah, that's why I do it. I'm getting better
helps
stretches
my
while I
split.
sleep. I've been stretching my
I had a buddy who he would sleep like this, specifically just to keep his hips really open.
gosh.
He would just fall asleep like this. He wouldn't stay like that all night.
That
but
seems a little excessive to be stuck in that position.
he was another one of those anomalous flexible guys, so it was nothing for him to be in that for a long period of time. He was like a
It's like easy peasy.
but adult tummy time, big fan. I'm gonna make that a thing.
Popularize
We're
it.
gonna make that a prescription that we have with Return to Play is some sort of amount of time each day spent on your stomach. If you can do some in your sleep, great. Doing some actively during the day is also great. Just to give your spine some extension, because like you were saying earlier, a lot of us are just so dominant here. You need a little bit of that opposition, and it's the same thing as we go into our strength balance tests in Return to Play. Our assessment is making sure that your push and pull relationship is equal enough to land you in a nice neutral posture. You're not overly chest dominant where now you have this concave posturing, your lats are really tight, your chest is constricted, all of that, but you have a nice balance between your back and your chest muscles so that you have a good standing and seated position in a place that's not going to affect you for symptomatic pain.
I gotta run. My clients are here.
Beautiful. All good. I think
we
were...
We made it through like 3 classes.
Yeah, that's
or
all right.
something.
I think the big 3 that were involved with the ground up approach. So we can dive into some of our more niche offerings the next time.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will see you next time.